Welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight is part 2 in the case of Lyle and Erik Menendez, also known as the Menendez Brothers. So if you missed part 1, make sure to go back so you're caught up to where we are, which is the night of August 20th, 1989. If you've seen part 1, you know where we are and you know where we're headed. So what happened on August 20th, 1989? Well, let's find out. Let's go ahead and dive on in. August 20th, 1989. Jose and Kitty Menendez, Lyle and Erik's parents, were home alone as Lyle and Erik were out for the evening. When Lyle and Erik came home, they discovered their parents were dead. But they weren't just dead. They had been murdered. So 911 was called. When the police officers arrived at the home, they heard screaming and watched as 2 men ran out the front door. Those 2 men were Lyle and Erik Menendez. They ran past the officers, through the gate in the front of the driveway, and fell to their knees on the grass that was in between the street and the sidewalk. Over and over again, the brothers shouted, quote, "Oh my God, I can't believe it," end quote. The 2 cops that were on the scene tried to get information out of the brothers, but that was not happening. Erik was too busy trying to ram his head into a tree, while brother Lyle was trying to restrain and calm him down. Police noticed that nothing had been stolen from the home. Everything was as it stood. It also appeared that there was no forced entry into the Menendez home. Well, the police took Lyle and Erik down to the police department for further questioning. During the questioning, Erik became so distraught, he began to sob and was unable to sit still. Lyle, on the other hand, was completely under control. He answered all questions methodically. After about 20 minutes, the questioning ended because Erik broke down uncontrollably. But before the questioning ended, the brothers provided police with a chronology, a timeline, of how they spent August 20th, 1989, from the morning up until the evening when they found their parents dead in their home. According to the brothers, they played tennis in the morning on the tennis court behind their home. They then watched part of a tennis match on television and spent the afternoon shopping at their local shopping mall. Around 5 p.m., the brothers made plans to get together with a friend at a local food festival. Well, before that, they decided to go see the new James Bond movie, License to Kill. So they left their home around 8 p.m. Well, the lines to get into the Bond movie were so long, they couldn't get in. So they went to a different theater to see Batman. After Batman, the brothers drove to Santa Monica, but got lost on the way, so they missed seeing their friend. So then the brothers from a payphone? What's a payphone? Yes, those existed in 1989. They called their friend Perry Bierman. Perry and the brothers made plans to go to the Cheesecake Factory in Beverly Hills. After the brothers called Perry, they decided to first stop home so they could get Erik's fake ID so that he could drink alcohol at the restaurant. It is there, when they got home, that Lyle and Erik had found their parents dead. Police asked Lyle who could possibly have hated his parents enough to want to kill them. Lyle answered, quote, "Maybe the mob," end quote. Because the brothers were not suspected initially of killing their parents, the police did not administer a gunshot residue test. I'm sure this is going to haunt them. 3 days after Jose and Kitty Menendez were murdered is when the autopsies took place. The autopsies were quite telling. For Jose's autopsy, it revealed a shotgun wound to the head. That wound was 5 inches by 4 inches. His brain had been pulverized. There was also a, quote, deformity of the face, end quote, caused by multiple fractures of the facial and jawbones. Soot was found around the wound, indicating that when the fatal shot was fired, the gun had literally been placed against the back of Jose's head. But that was not all. There were also 2 shots to his right arm, a shot to his left elbow, 1 shot below his shoulder, and 1 shot to the lower left knee. Kitty's autopsy, now that revealed something quite different. Kitty had been shot in the left cheek. That fractured her upper jawbone and dislodged 4 of her upper teeth. There were additional wounds to Kitty's skull, fractures to her lower jaw, and pellet wounds to her tongue. One of the shots had also lacerated her brain. Kitty also had shotgun wounds to her right forearm and her left breast. There were also 3 wounds to her left leg. But there was something else, something quite telling. Kitty's right thumb also appeared severed. Investigators theorized that Kitty had extended her hand to block the shotgun blast that caused the 4-inch wound to her face as a last effort to save herself. The final shot to Kitty was her left knee. Why their knees? Lyle and Erik created an elaborate memorial service for their parents, Jose and Kitty. This took place August 25th, 1989. However, they arrived late to their parents' own service, 1 hour late. It was stated Erik looked uncomfortable. His face was red and swollen, while Lyle appeared cool and calm. The brothers moved from hotel to hotel. They weren't staying in the family home, and this was because they stated they feared the same mobsters who murdered their parents were going to come after them. Well, this didn't stop the brothers from living life. Just 4 days after the murders, the brothers began a spending spree. These sprees were funded by Jose's personal life insurance policy of $650,000. The brothers spent money on designer label clothes, jewelry, and this included $15,000 on Rolex watches and money clips. But that was not all. Lyle decided he had to have a new car, so he got a Porsche 911 Carrera. Erik traded in his Ford Escort for something a little more modest, a Jeep Wrangler. By October 1989, Lyle had charged more than $90,000 to Jose's American Express card. He frequently traveled between New Jersey and California on the MGM Grand while he was busy trying to establish what would be called Menendez Investment Enterprises. Well, what did that consist of? Lyle gathered his friends from Princeton and made them officers of the Menendez Investment Enterprises. Doesn't it always go well when you hire your friends? Lyle rented an office for $3,000 a month in a Princeton shopping mall and furnished it with extremely expensive furniture. The office ultimately sat unused. It was never used. Lyle, his longtime dream was to own a restaurant. So he decided to buy a place called Chuck's Spring Street Cafe, which was a snack shop in Princeton. Lyle paid $550,000 for Chuck's and then changed the name of the restaurant to now being called Mr. Buffalo's. After purchasing Mr. Buffalo's, Lyle announced he wanted to open a new Mr. Buffalo's every 2 months. Lyle was clearly way ahead of himself. That's just not good business. And also, the original Mr. Buffalo's was losing money because Lyle was allowing his friends to freeload off of him. Gee, we didn't see that coming. Erik was also taken advantage of. He tried to sponsor a rock concert at the Palladium in Los Angeles. So Erik gave $40,000 to a partner as payment. Well, the partner disappeared, along with Erik's $40,000. Erik then decided he needed a new venture. So what he decided was to try the professional tennis tour. He hired a private tennis coach for $60,000 a year. Erik and the coach began to travel extensively, staying at lavish and expensive hotels, and spending whatever money Erik thought he needed to sharpen his game. The estate that Jose and Kitty left was valued at $14 million. Think how much $14 million was in 1989. However, Lyle and Erik would only each inherit about $2 million. This was after loans and taxes were subtracted. This was much less than the brothers thought they would inherit. The Beverly Hills investigators watched as the brothers threw money around. Kitty and Jose were murdered, remember, August 20, 1989. By the end of that year, Lyle and Erik had spent more than $1 million. The police now began to suspect that the brothers were behind the murders. The police were also suspicious because they found out the brothers had called a computer expert on August 31st, 1989. This expert was brought in to erase the files on Kitty's computer. What files did the brothers want the police not to find? Glenn Stevens was the expert that was hired. He was a friend of Lyle's, and he totally ratted them out. He told police Lyle had told him to erase the new will that was on the computer and to ensure that no one would ever be able to retrieve the computer file. October 24th, 1989, a police detective went to interview Erik. Erik complained to the officer that Lyle was spending too much money and that Lyle was, quote, being just like my father, end quote. After the interview concluded, Erik called Lyle in Princeton, but he was unable to reach him. Erik really needed somebody to talk to, someone to confide in, so he called his psychotherapist. This therapist was Dr. Jerome Ozil. Erik went in to see Dr. Ozil on October 31st. During that session, Erik said, quote, "We did it. We killed our parents," end quote. Erik told Dr. Ozil that he talked about the brothers' shared belief that Jose was planning to disinherit them from their will, and how terrible the brothers' lives had been because Jose dominated them. The brothers told each other that they should kill Jose. Well, what about Kitty? Kitty became a problem because they didn't want to kill her, but they could not think a way of not killing her with their father being murdered, so she had to go. At this point, Dr. Ozil stopped Erik from saying anything more and had him call Lyle. Lyle raced over to Dr. Ozil's office. But while Erik was waiting, he continued to tell the doctor about the story. He told Dr. Ozil how they thought they had committed the perfect crime. They thought they'd been careful and cleaned up the shotgun casings. They did not have to worry about fingerprints because the crime they committed was in their own home. So naturally, their fingerprints would be everywhere. Once the brothers finished cleaning up, they stopped on Mulholland Drive, and Erik waited until the area was clear of cars and people, then drove to throw the shotguns away in a nearby cannon. They headed for a gas station where they dumped their blood-splattered clothing and shoes in one of the dumpsters, along with disposing of the shell casings. Then they drove home. The plan, though, was to go to the Cheesecake Factory to meet up with their friend, because, you still have an appetite after killing your parents. But Erik was falling apart, so he decided to go home and decided, let's call the police. Wow. When Lyle arrived now at Dr. Ozil's office, he was furious. He was pissed that Erik had told Dr. Ozil everything. They told him everything. Dr. Ozil explained to the brothers the difference between a crime that takes place in the moment of a heated passion, such as during an argument, and a crime that's committed to reach a specific goal. Lyle told Dr. Ozil that if he told anybody what the brothers had done, he would kill him too. November 2nd, 1989, the brothers met again with Dr. Ozil. Lyle again threatened the doctor, telling him that he and Erik had considered killing him in order to keep their secret. That poses a problem because now Dr. Ozil could have reported Lyle and Erik to police. The threat now erased the patient-therapist confidentiality barrier. But Dr. Ozil decided not to do that. Instead, he made notes and tape recordings of the sessions with the brothers. On November 17th, 1989, detectives interviewed Erik's friend named Craig Signorelli. Craig told the detectives that shortly after the murder had occurred, Erik had asked Craig if he wanted to know how it happened. Craig immediately knew what was meant by it. Erik told Craig that on the night of the murders, Lyle met him with their shotguns saying, quote, "Let's do it," end quote. According to Craig, of what the brother had told him, the plan was for Lyle to shoot Jose and for Erik to shoot Kitty. Well, Lyle pointed his gun at Jose and shot him very easily, then went behind him and again shot him in the back of the head. Erik, he was unable to shoot his mother, and when she tried to get away, Lyle shot her. Erik said, quote, "After it looked like my mother was dead, I shot her twice with my gun," end quote. Now, March 5th, 1990, the detectives received a huge break in the case. This was from a woman named Judalon Smith. Well, who is Judalon? She was the 37-year-old woman who owned an audio tape duplicating business. But more importantly, she was Dr. Jerome Ozil's lover. She told detectives that Dr. Ozil had asked her to eavesdrop on a therapy session he had with the Menendez brothers on October 31st, 1989. So she told detectives everything she heard. She heard a shouting match between Lyle and Erik in which Lyle shouted, quote, "I can't believe you told him. We've got to kill him and anybody associated with him," end quote. According to Judalon, Erik screamed back, quote, "I can't stop you from what you have to do, but I can't kill anymore," end quote. The session ended because Erik ran out of the office sobbing. Well, Judalon saw Lyle leave the office, followed by Dr. Ozil. She told detectives what she had witnessed, which was as Lyle was leaving, he threatened Dr. Ozil. She also told detectives that Dr. Ozil had told her everything he had on the tapes. That included the confessions to the murders, the explanations for why the brothers had committed their crimes. It had everything. Well, March 8th, 1990, detectives obtained a search warrant for Dr. Ozil's tapes. What he handed over was 17 audio tapes and 7 pages of notes. Detectives, after reading through these notes and listening to these tapes, finally heard the details of what happened on August 20th, 1989, from the killers. And that ends part 2 of the Menendez Brothers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Danny After Dark. Make sure to come back for part 3, where we pick up and go through everything from the trial to the ending of the case. You don't want to miss it. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of these notifications or any of my new episodes. Do you have a question about the case? Let's be interactive. Leave a comment below. Is there a case that you would like me to cover? Well, leave it down below and you may see it covered in a future episode. Until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us.